Okay, that's 4 o'clock now. I just would like to say hello to everyone and thanks for logging in today to this Call Scotland webinar. My name's Shirley Lawson, I'm part of the Call team. I'm standing in today for my colleague Craig, who normally does the facilitating of our webinars. As you may know, it's AAC Awareness Month, so it's very apt that this webinar today on offer from Janice Murray, Professor of Communication Disability at Manchester University. So we're delighted to have Janice. Welcome. Thank you so much for offering to do this webinar for us and sharing your thoughts and expertise on augmentative and alternative communication. Just to say, down at the bottom right hand side, there is an opportunity for you to write questions in the chat bubble. All these questions will be answered at the end. I'll keep a track of them, and once Janice has finished her presentation, we'll get to the questions. So I've just seen people saying hello from all over. We've got people from Ayr, from Fife, from Aberdeen, from Florida, from Canada. So it's great, it's a real international gathering. So please put your questions in there, and as I say, we'll get to them at the end there. So Janice, okay, I'm just going to pass over to you, and we're really looking forward to seeing your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just taking over control of the screen, hopefully. And if you could just confirm that you can see that.
Yes, I can. Perfect.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation and this opportunity to spend some time chatting with you this early evening, and it's sunny in Manchester as well. Amazing to have people from all over the world. That's just brilliant. Tonight's session, I'm fronting really quite a large team of people. This project that I'm going to be talking about was a 3-year funded project from the National Institute for Health Research, and Manchester Metropolitan University, with me leading it, were the lead organisation, with our colleagues from Barnsley Assistive Technology and some other colleagues from the University of Leeds. So it's definitely a collective effort. And I'm going to say a little bit about the original aims of the study, but that isn't what I'm going to spend most of the time talking about. So this was a UK-wide study, and it was intended that we would be exploring our current practice in terms of clinical decision-making around identifying the appropriate AAC technology to suit young people, children and young people in particular. So the focus was young people aged between 5 and adulthood, and we did have some adults who used AAC reflecting back on their experiences of that whole assessment recommendation process. So we were anticipating identifying areas of good practice, and also we were anticipating identifying areas for improvement and development, based on the fact that one of the drivers for the research was that often uncertainty about, if I made a decision up in Fife, which I would have done a long number of years ago, about a child, would a colleague in Manchester be going through a similar decision-making process? How do we know that we're making equitable decisions and can be confident in those decisions? So that was part of the backdrop to this exploration. And one of the key things that we agreed to produce at the end of the project was a set of guidance resources to support, and I guess support people to feel they're going through a similar process of decision making by following the protocols that emerged as a consequence of the evidence that we accrued from across the whole of the UK. I'm not going to say any more about how we acquired all of that evidence, but I'm happy to answer questions on that later. But what I want to do is really get on to the focus for this evening, excuse me, which is to really approach the iAsk website resource, which was the guidance material that we produced as one of the outputs from the project. And to help us navigate the website, I'm going to introduce you to a young person called Gita, who is fictitious, but plausible in terms of a young person who might benefit from AAC. So this is the landing page of our iAsk website. We refer to the project as iAsk rather than that terribly long title that you saw on the first slide. And it really is about identifying appropriate symbol communication. So as we move through, we'll see that there was perhaps more of a focus in the data on electronic high-tech equipment recommendations, but hopefully you can see that there is also some application to paper-based low-tech equipment. So for this evening, we're going to spend the majority of time exploring what is in front of you there as the tab labelled iAsk explanatory model of AAC decision making. But I'm going to just highlight the tab on the right-hand side, the resources tab. So basically we've produced a lot of resources and you can get to them through two ways. You can either go through the resources tab, which would take you to an A to Z alphabetical list, or you can go through the iAsk explanatory model tab, which will highlight particular resources in relation to particular topics or aspects of the decision-making process. So once you're more familiar with the resource you're interested in, you might want to cut to the chase and just go straight to the resources tab. But hopefully that'll become a little bit clearer as we go along. So first of all, here's Gita. She's 9 years, 2 months old. She's got cerebral palsy and a hearing impairment. She effectively uses her own powered wheelchair, and she can say a few words that people understand. She lives in an extended family with grandma. She's got an older sister and a younger brother. And Gita and her younger brother Jamal both attend a special school. And at the moment, we know that she's got a picture book to help her communication. Gita's teacher says that she switches off in class at times and can be hard to engage in schoolwork. So we've got a little bit of information there. And if you want to read more about Gita, Yvonne Lynch, who was on the iAsk team, and myself have a chapter in press in a book that Martine Smith is leading on, Clinical Cases in AAC. And that is actually going to be a set of international chapters. So look out for it. It's due out in the spring. So thinking about how you might navigate through the website, what we absolutely are not expecting people to do is start at the top and work their way through. There is an incredible amount of information on the website, and actually if you tried to work your way through everything, it could be quite confusing. So what I suggest you do is you identify some of the elements or the characteristics, the features, the factors that are most relevant to the individual you're considering, and look for where that might be on the website. So in other words, filter out things that maybe aren't the priorities for you. And I'm going to try and explain how that might work for you. So I'm kind of assuming some of you will have visited the website, some of you won't. Some of you have maybe visited it and then never gone there again. So hopefully you might after today. So once you drop onto the landing page, you have actually two ways to get to the explanatory model. And one is the tab at the top, as I've explained on the left-hand side there. But also you can scroll down to the bottom of the landing page and you'll find this block of 6 that kind of recurs across different elements of the website. So you could click in here and it would take you to a front page that would then have this explanatory model. Now, I love it when you can summarise a 3-year project on one page, and this is really what this schematic visual representation is actually about. So there's an awful lot of information and detail sitting behind this summary, and much of that detail is contained in different elements of the website that you can then navigate through to. But in essence, to just explain this model a little bit, we, from the evidence that emerged from our findings, we felt that we had 2 distinct components. So one we eventually described as competing considerations, and the other cultural and contextual influencers. So taking that top half, you might come across the phrase sort of feature matching, in some respects, that is what this top half of the model is considering. But one of the phrases that kept up in the data was this phrase of trade-offs, and having to make trade-offs when you were trying to decide what was the right match for the young person and the possible communication need. And that was where we came up with the competing considerations phrase instead. And you'll notice that we've got cogwheels here, and it implies the trade-off. So if you recognise a certain feature in the child's ability to access things, that's going to turn that small cog at the top. Other child characteristics, like their motivation, their interest in communicating with people, might turn the cog another way. And in doing that, it might then raise a different set of communication aid attributes that you're going to focus more on. You're looking for a system that would align most effectively with those particular characteristics or features. So having gone through that consideration, that's only half the story. And this was very clear in our data, that you may have at this point come up with a possible recommendation, but you then had to think about the context and the cultural influencers that might impact on the ways in which the young person might attempt to communicate and the ways in which the aid that you'd identified would or would not work. And so this actually broke down into a range of things which we eventually called ways of working, available resources. And these elements are really looking at things like, well, what people resources are available in the context to support afterwards? What financial support is there? What knowledge and skills exists? So I'm not going to go into the detail of those at the moment, but let's just follow through from this landing page, and then we've touched on the explanatory model tab, and then that takes us through to what would look something like this, where you would then have the chance to access under the table of contents the thing that is most relevant to the debate that you're having about what to look at. Now, you might want to look at all of these areas, but I'm guessing certain things will stand out for some individuals more than others. So for this evening, I've decided we're going to look at child characteristics to begin with. And if you clicked onto the child characteristics under table of contents, it would then take you to something that looks a bit like this, where we've got Gita. And all of a sudden, oh golly, we've now got another long list of things. And I think is the thing that potentially could be overfacing with the amount of information that we've provided you with. But here again, you can look down that list and start to think about, well, what's most important for me to think about in relation to the young child I'm considering? Given what we know about Gita so far, I've decided to choose the toggle on child preference. And let's see what that would then take us to if we explored child preference on the website. So, to summarise Gita, first of all, we don't really know much about her views on her communication abilities or her communication book. There's some suggestion that she's not maybe using it as much as she could. So actually, let's explore her preferences. How are we going to do that? I'm going to go back a moment. With all of the elements listed under child characteristics, so age all the way through to progress and community, if you clicked on any of those, you would end up with the box that looks something like the one in the middle there, that at the moment is child preference. So it would change according to the element that you were wanting to follow through. And then consistently across the website, you have these 4 other areas that you can explore under the heading of, in this instance, child preference. So the thing to point out is if you click on the implications, what we have provided here are sound bites from the research and the evidence that we felt was coming through from the research data collection. And we've picked out key messages that we felt were important to convey under each of these headings. So giving you certain pointers to think about. Many of you will think about these anyway, but this is helping reinforce that actually you're not the only person that thinks about this. This is something that came through a national accrue of how do we think about these things. So having thought about that, it's also kind of giving you the option to then look at, well, if I wanted to get a sense of Gita's preference, what resources can I access? So that's where you can drop into the I ask resources or the other resources. If you want to actually read some of the published material, and I make no apology for under Learn More, you're often going to find our other peer-reviewed publications related to the I ask project, which again may be very helpful for you if you're wanting to present your case in relation to evidence to draw from. So let's just look at some of the I ask resources that might be relevant here. So this is not the full list that you would see if you clicked in at this point, but I've just cut and pasted around some to give you a flavour of what you might find there. So we produced during the project a number of communication aid books that were meant as almost like warm-up materials that you could use to help the young person start to think about, well, what is communication aid and what bits of it do I like and what bits of it don't I like? And we've had quite a bit of feedback that these have been quite helpful books to download. So you can download all of these and make use of them as you wish. And there is another example further down of a communication system trial evaluation document. I guess many of you have these sorts of documents. This document was pulled together in relation to the information we were receiving during the research generation. And then if you clicked into the other resources in this instance, there's just a couple of examples. Under other resources, please be aware it is not an exhaustive list. We do actually say that, and we're always very happy to hear of more that you could include. And then under Learn More, as I've said, there are some examples of publications that you could follow up. So that in essence is how the navigation around the website operates. So just to give you a flavour of a slightly different area, and I've chosen communication aid attributes given what I said about the bias in the data towards the electronic high-tech end of things. And that comes through in the descriptors that are used here. But I would like to suggest, which is why I've chosen graphic representation here, that if you are focusing on individuals who are at a paper-based level, a low-tech level, which absolutely does not mean simple, they're often much more complex, I would just put a bracket around the word software there and come visiting this section to just see if there are some pieces of information that are relevant in relation to any way in which we present graphic representation. But you can see that the layout is very, very similar. So what do we know about Gita in terms of her the communication aid attributes? Given that I've pulled out graphic representation as an example from the website, the summary here is we really don't know anything much about what she's using. So we've got quite a lot to try and learn there. So what might help us explore that with Gita? So here again is that summary of possible implications. So this is drawing down from the evidence, the data that we pulled together during the project. And there's one resource example that might help you explore the elements of graphic representation if, and I know in certain places having trial opportunities is challenging, but if you get that chance, then here's a document, again, pulled together from the information we were gaining from all of the participants. Other resources in this instance, again, readily accessible resources, we always try to make them readily accessible. We do always need to check that they're still live elements. So very briefly, dropping down to the bottom half of the explanatory model. So if you remember, I talked about cultural and contextual influencers. And you'll notice on the top right there that I've toggled into available resources, and you then have a list of features that were identified. Once I get to the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you a shortcut to give you a 2-page handout that describes all of these different labels that we've got here. So attitude, cost, intervention, and how they've been defined as part of this project. So again, we've got a description of what we mean, and then we've got some implications there. And one of the ones that I just want to pull out in relation to Gita is engaging in an open and honest discussion about attitudes that may be unrealistic or negative, and ways in which you navigate that, because that can be one of the most challenging things in a context, is working out how people see their involvement and contribution, and how their perspective on it and their perspective on the young person may influence things. So very briefly, in relation to Gita, we know that there are mixed views on how our board works. So how might we explore that in a way that isn't challenging attitude as such, but is perhaps giving people a way of thinking about their contribution in a different way? And one of the things that we developed for this purpose was something called choosing roles in AAC decision making and implementation. So if you clicked into the resources at that point, you could download this particular document. It doesn't look quite like this, but I've summarised it here. And what I want you to note here is, what we're not saying is, I want to be the speech language therapist here, I can do the teacher role here, I can do the teaching assistant role here. We've provided descriptors that actually allow anybody to suggest they could play any of those roles, take on any of those roles. They may feel they want to learn some of the skills to take on those roles. So it opens up a different kind of discussion about kind of input and support the young person may need, and it allows people to think about their role in doing that. And one of the things that we've also provided on the website to help you do that is this spidergram. And I've just taken a head teacher as an example, and how they might see their role in supporting Gita. So this person might see themselves very definitely receiving information. If we go around clockwise, they may see themselves as observing Gita communicating at certain times. So that's still quite high up on the options of what they might do here. Whereas then when we go around the others, around the bottom half, this head teacher doesn't really think they've got a role in any of those things. And so you can start to see how people want to engage, and it also gives you some insights into what they think they have to offer. And that maybe allows you to have a slightly different discussion about how they could be involved. And just to summarise here for you, this is how we described it for Gita in the end. Now, I'm cheating a little bit because I haven't given you all of the information that is provided in this summary here. But this, again, is something that we're going to produce in this book chapter that I've mentioned, and we will also put this on the website eventually. But here we've been able to look at different people's contributions to supporting Gita in terms of how you move forward once the decision is made about the system that's best for her. I'm acutely aware of time, and I think I've just about made it, because that whistle-stop tour has taken you and given you a brief overview of how you might navigate and make best use of the website resource, and hopefully it will help you kind of go back and revisit things that maybe you found more difficult or challenging. And I just want to flag up an early notice of a one-day study day workshop that we're splitting over 2 half days, and it will be virtual delivery coming up early next year. And it is the cancelled, postponed activity that we were going to do with Communication Matters earlier in the year. So thank you very much. And I'm just going to move on to the last slide, which is, this is the, if you do nothing else, this is where I would start. I'd go into the resources section, and here's the summary, 2-page summary on competing considerations and cultural and contextual influencers that might then help you decide which bits of the website are going to be most useful for you to visit. So thank you very much. And shall I stop sharing now?
Yes, if you want to stop sharing. So thank you. You've done incredibly well to get all that information in that really whirlwind short webinar. Thank you very much. An incredible amount of information on your website too. Just to say that any of the links that Janice has put up there, we will get them to you because the webinar will be archived, but we'll also provide the information and links to the website. If you have a specific question for Janice, if you'd like to go to the bottom right hand portion of your screen and go to the little purple chevron and click out onto the chat bubble, you can type in a question there. If you've got anything burning question just now. I know it was a lot to take in, but I'm sure it's fascinating.
Yes, I'm sorry. I did throw an awful lot at everyone, so I do apologise for that.
No, but lots of nice comments coming in there. I really liked the trade-offs represented by the cogwheels in the explanatory model of AAC decision making. I thought that was a really nice feature too. That worked really well. And also when you see the case study, I always think, even though it's a fictional but very plausible case study, I think it's when you have a visual of a child and very much a child-centered approach to the decision making. I'm just having a quick look at the questions just now. So much information. Since Gemma's asking, I'll just have to scroll up there again. I wondered if there were any challenges you encountered when collaborating this resource, locality issues, etc. Differences in paediatric and adult caseloads.
Right, okay, can I just check I'm understanding the question? When you were asking about collaboration there, do you mean in terms of collecting the data for the research? Or do you, could you just clarify maybe? I don't know whether you want to come on.
Gemma, just if she continues to type in there.
The data. Is that Gemma Parker?
Yep. Right. Collecting the data.
So, did we have any challenges collecting the data? I think that the huge challenges, we had huge support from everybody, and we're really grateful for that. But one of the challenges was time and people's availability to either offer clients that we would go out and interview as part of the data collection. We were very well supported by the specialised services who were involved in the focus groups, and I must admit we did just about lose every AAC friend in the UK when we sent out the second of 2 surveys, because everybody found it a very difficult survey to do. But so it wasn't that we had difficulties finding collaborators, it was often the logistics of making time available, and we were really focusing on the paediatric services anyway, because our focus was children and young people. So I can't really comment on how that might have worked if we had ventured into the adult acquired context. I hope that answers your question. Hi, okay. Nara.
Yes, Jem was happy with that. So
thank you, Jem.
That's great. You said you had a 2-page handout, Janice. Shall we get? Will that be a link to that as well? If you have got it there, you could put it in the chat pane yourself, or else I can add that to the list of things that I'll send out.
If I just share my screen again, because it's that very last slide. Let me just do that and make sure I've got. So that's the 2-page handout, and those are the links that would take you directly to those handouts.
Okay, I think because people
so
won't be able to copy and
of,
paste it, I'll add them onto the email they'll get when they get the archive.
Brill. Okay.
That would be the thing to do. And Gillian McNeil, our specialist speech and language therapist in the call team, is asking, would you advise that the resource is followed through fully when supporting a CYP, or okay to dip in and out?
Oh, absolutely.
Supporting a child or young person.
Absolutely dip in and out. I tried to emphasize that repeatedly, that I wouldn't expect people to start at the beginning of the explanatory model and work through all of those elements. I think you would run away if that was the process, because there's too much there. That's why I think this 2-page summary would be a place to decide which are the priorities for this young person, and then go specifically to those parts of the website. It might then take you to other parts because you think, oh, okay, I need to visit the other part now. But I think that would be a much more practical way of approaching use of the resource, really, and the way that we would envisage it. And part of this study day that we're planning to run is, again, to help people be comfortable about dipping in and out of it.
Right, okay. And did you have a date for the study day? I know that you said it was going to be next year and it's a virtual event.
Yeah, we haven't. We are hoping to have the date in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we will then push out a whole, publicity on that. We're hoping it'll be January, February, because given that it's now going to be virtual, we might all like something in dark January and February. Yes. So that was the plan. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll be able to push that out, and Communication Matters will be pushing that information out for us as well.
Good. I think that would be a great thing to start the new year with. As you say, in January, that would be a good start for everyone. But you're getting so many nice comments here. Everyone's finding everything really helpful, and it has been an excellent webinar. So thank you so much for joining in today, doing the webinar. As I say, it's all been recorded, and the archive will appear on our website, so lots of other people will be able to access it as well. And people here today will get a link to it with all the resources. So just really on behalf of the Call Scotland team, thank you so much again, Janice, for your presentation, and thank you for everyone from all over the world who's logged in to listen to it. It's great to have an international audience, and that we're all working together for the best outcomes for our children and young people. So thank you very much, everyone, and to Robert for moderating as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janice.
Shirley, could I just ask, can I see a copy or get a copy of the chats and comments, because I haven't really been able to see many of them, so it would be lovely to just get that.
I will take a copy of them all now, and then I'll get them over to you, send them to you. I'll just do a quick screenshot of it all and get that to you.
Really helpful. Thank you very much. So hopefully that thanks, Gillian. It's interesting to see names I do recognise, and Morag as well.
Well, it's certainly very well. I think we had over 50 people there at one point.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's
Excellent.
good, yeah.
I know, really, really good. And it's really